Buckeye Talk from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. We just talked to a whole bunch of Ohio State offensive linemen. We talked to offensive line coach Justin Fry, possibly someday a head coach in college football, and a lot of intel flying around today. Doug, what's kind of stood out to you as maybe the most important thing you heard about this offensive line or from these offensive linemen?
So you get reminders sometimes talking to guys. They're like, this is not always easy, man, right? That like it's hard to be a football player to place like Ohio State. And you're surrounded by talented people. So Matthew Jones, class of 2018, top 100 national recruit, sixth offensive lineman a year ago, has started games, right? Has been an important part of this team. But a year ago at this time, he thought he was going to be a starting offensive lineman, and then they did the shuffle and moved Thayer Munford inside and started DeJuan Jones instead, and Matthew Jones was kind of the odd man out. So now he's back in camp, and he's on target to start. And it's just a reminder, like, this guy is his fifth year. He was a top 100 recruit, and he said, like, I'm proud of myself. And it almost like it gives you chills a little bit of, like, this guy is really talented, but he has had to grind, man. And he said, I never thought about leaving. I love it here. When I get locked in on something, he's from New York, went to the same high school as Curtis Samuel, and here he is in year 5. There have been a lot of year 5 offensive linemen, first-year starters, who have helped Ohio State in my time here. And he seems the next guy up for that. And it's like a little bit inspiring of like, listen, I would say you have the right to transfer. Transferring is a great option for a lot of guys. And he said, I never thought about it. So good luck to Matthew Jones, first-time starter in year 5.
And speaking of like that inspiring story, Josh Fryer now looks at himself, a guy who's a little bit younger and in a kind of maybe a utility role, sees himself, hey, maybe I could be this year's sixth man if they need one, and I can bounce around where I'm needed. I want to talk about Zen Machowski. We've been talking so much on Buckeye Talk about not only how much they need depth at tackle this year, how much it is a potential concern for the 2023 roster, and he's a guy that from early in camp, we came out here on the first day and we saw that he was the left tackle with the twos. And so I've just kind of been going around here asking everybody what they're seeing out of him. Josh Fryer talking a lot about the maturity that he's seeing from Zen Machowski. DeJuan Jones talking about how envious he is of how tight, in his terms, Machowski is with his hands. And that I thought was an important thing to hear. That it's not just that this guy is 6'8", so he has to play tackle because that's where he'd have to go. It's that he has – the technique is building, the technique that you would need in order to separate and be effective at the Big Ten level. Just they have to develop more talent there, and it sounds like he is making the right kind of progress early in his career.
Yeah, he brought that up after the spring. He and Ryan Day and Coach Fry sat down and had a conversation about 2023. And the fact that this year he can take a step towards putting himself in a position, if he's a backup tackle, to being the starting tackle a year from now if the doomsday situation happens where DeJuan Jones and Paris Johnson both go pro. So, yeah, it's he knows that. The team seems to know that as well. So he understands that this is a very, very important fall camp for him, even if it's just to gain a backup job because of what it means for a year from now. But I'm going to talk about Luke Whitler, who is really smart. I think we kind of knew that already, but I off to the side over here, I was having him do what I think we had CJ during the spring, where just take us through your pre-snap routine. He took me through that and how he and CJ kind of communicate at the line of scrimmage there. And one of the things he said is, CJ knows I'm ready to go when I put my hand on the ball, which I don't know if that's a normal thing for quarterbacks and centers. I've never played center, but that's how they do it here. But he also talked about He shined a light on the defense and how the multiple different sets that Jim Knowles brought here is coincidentally also helping this offensive line. Last year, it was basically 4-down defensive front. That's what Ohio State's been known for basically since Urban Meyer showed up, especially once Larry Johnson got here. But the problem with that is you get to an Oregon team who only plays a 3-man front, and then all of a sudden it's something new that you have to prepare for, and that happened a couple times last year. Notre Dame has a 3-down front. There are some other teams on their schedule who are going to have a 3-down front. And because Ohio State has that Leo Jack position where sometimes there are only 3 defensive linemen in the dirt, that's preparing Ohio State's offensive line to face something like that. They've even talked about that. It's like, you need to get used to this defense because that's what we're going to see against Notre Dame. So Luke Whitler, first of all, being more comfortable in this role because he's not finding out he's a starter 4 days before the Minnesota game helps. But then also some of the stuff the defensive line and defense is doing is helping this offensive line be better prepared to see different defensive fronts going into the season.
And it's big because, again, that September 3rd opener, Notre Dame's got a couple guys who are some defensive linemen, some edge guys who are getting some attention already this year as being some of the best in the country, and that's who Ohio State's going to start off with. Listen to the pod anywhere you can find us on Buckeye Talk and get the text 614-350-3315, daily intel from camp and everything else we're hearing from Ohio State football.